Can You Beat Gauntlet Legends will control on all 4 players with one controller? It's a question literally nobody asked, but I'm gonna answer it anyway. Before starting this challenge, there are a few things that I need to go over. First, I'll be using a PS5 controller and the help of emulation to make any input on the controller be seen by the game as input for all 4 players. Second, the characters I will be using for this challenge were made beforehand, but no progress was made for any of them. This was done to avoid the headache of trying to navigate the character select screen for all 4 players at the same time. I also took the luxury of giving them rather affectionate nicknames to help distinguish them throughout the challenge. Third, if any character dies throughout a level, I must restart that level. All 4 characters must reach the exit portal to consider a level completed for this challenge. Without this rule, I could just kill off 3 of my characters and play the game like normal. Lastly, I will be using save states between levels to once again avoid the headache of navigating the menu with 4 different characters. The challenge will be over once we have collected all 13 runestones and defeated Scorn in the underworld. That's pretty much all the important stuff out of the way. Now then, let's begin. Loading into Summoner's Tower for the first time, we totally ignore the lore dump the game tries to throw at us and begin making our way to the first level. Unfortunately, we encounter the first major issue for this challenge before we can even make it to the first level. You see, Gauntlet Legends has 4 classes to choose from: the Warrior, Valkyrie, Wizard, and Archer. Each class has their own stats in strength, armor, magic, and speed. The main problem is that each class has a different speed stat, which dictates how fast or slow they move around the level, so each character having a different speed stat causes them to break apart from each other whenever they move around. And now, the simple act of walking to the Mountain Kingdom has caused everyone to become so far apart that they can't neatly walk into the portal in the same formation they spawned in. To get everyone back in a formation that can fit in the portal, I had to do what I call finagling, where I just move everyone around and get them stuck on walls until they're all in a neat enough square again to fit in the portal. So after enough finagling, everyone was back into a good enough position that I was finally able to enter the first level. Spawning into the Valley of Fire, we immediately start mowing down all the enemies with our increased firepower from having 4 characters. One thing I quickly realized was that the level wasn't exactly the same as when I last played Gauntlet Legends. Well, as it turns out, the layouts of the levels actually change if you have more than one player as a way to sort of balance things out. The main thing is that levels will have more generators spawning enemies, so we'll be up against larger hordes than usual for this challenge. It's not all bad though, as the scaled up levels also include more treasure for us to collect. But even with more treasure in the levels, some characters are just going to end up having more of it than others. I noticed throughout this challenge that Coward the Green Archer and Dead the Blue Warrior ended up with most of the keys, so there were times where I had to finagle them to open chests or unlock gates because no one else had any keys. Crossing the bridge by the waterfall, I decided to use the max level turbo attack, which resulted in everyone unleashing their attack at the same time. While admittedly quite cool to watch, it's not exactly practical since normally just one of them is enough to clear an entire room of enemies, but later in the challenge I may have found a way to get more mileage out of it. After fighting through the enemies on the other side and activating the obelisk, I collected my first actual item for this challenge, the Fire Amulet. The Fire Amulet is a fairly standard item that just makes your attacks do a bit more damage until it runs out. I decided to turn it off for now in case we end up needing extra firepower later. More importantly was that this revealed the nightmare for this challenge, that is inventory management. Keeping track of 4 different characters' inventories on top of playing through the level is a lot for my one little brain. And as I progressed through the challenge, I ended up just ignoring the inventory for the most part, since messing with it was just way too distracting and often caused me to get someone stuck and take a lot of easily avoidable damage. Towards the middle of the level, I found the most overpowered item in the entire game, the Thunder Hammer. Slamming this thing on the ground causes the entire screen of enemies to be wiped out, but you only get 3 uses of it, so use it wisely. Oh yeah, Coward ended up grabbing a rapid fire item from one of the chests, and that's why they're firing like a machine gun here. At the final big area of enemies after that switch gate, everyone was really starting to get spread out, and it was really hard to keep track of everyone. I was trying to bring Ugly and Loser up the stairs, meanwhile Coward was going up the other stairs and Dead was living up to his name getting himself killed, but we managed to get through it without losing anyone. Exiting the level also required a bit of finagling to position everyone inside the exit portal, but it wasn't nearly as hard as it was to get into the level. First level down. As I mentioned before, I will be using save states between levels so I can just press continue when we get to the menu after every single level. Getting into the next portal was much easier this time around because after finishing a level, the game spawns you right in the middle of all the levels for that world. So this time around, nobody got so far away that I needed to do some finagling, and we had now entered Dagger Peak. Spawning in, we immediately get right down to business and practice genocide on the local enemies. Pretty quickly, Dead had gotten his hands on an invincibility item, so I tried to have him take the lead for a bit. Unfortunately, invincibility is one of the few items in Gauntlet Legends that cannot be toggled on and off, so I wasn't really able to save it for later after Dead had picked it up. A little later on, we were briefly split down these two separating paths, but I had the very smart idea to double back to rejoin the group because getting too far apart from each other would be a death sentence in this challenge. After that, we made it to the area with this level's obelisk and had our first encounter with Death. It's at this point that we discover that every time we need to defeat Death, every single character will use a potion when we press B, going through our precious potions quite fast. Making our way up this huge slope, Loser got totally blown up by a guy with an explosive barrel on their back. We also ran into Death again here, so there goes a few more potions of our already limited supply. Then, after going up this really huge slope, we encountered the first golem of this challenge. But luckily, golems aren't actually that big of a threat because we can easily melt them with our insane firepower. We then proceeded to grab the first and easiest runestone in the game, hidden behind this suspicious looking wall. Going up the final slope in the level, the remaining characters got their fair share of being blown up. We then plundered a bunch of chests at the end of the level containing plenty of gold, and finagled our way onto the exit portal. Unfortunately, because we had collected the runestone in the level, we had to watch the cutscene of Sumner placing it in the circle. This made us spawn back in the main lobby, so we had to make our way back to the Mountain Kingdom again and finagle our way into the next level. Before doing that though, I decided to check out Sumner's shop to see how much gold we had collected so far. The gold distribution was sort of even, but then I started selling off all the items we had acquired in the last two levels, and Coward ended up with over 2,000 gold from selling her 3 uses of the Thunder Hammer. I wanted to buy some speed stat upgrades for everyone, but didn't want Coward to begin any faster compared to the others as they already were. Archers start with the highest speed stat of any class, so I instead opted to purchase a set of health for whoever could afford it, and then use the remaining gold to buy Dead and Coward 1 upgrade to their strength stat. Unfortunately, Ugly is too poor to afford anything in the shop, so he had to sit out this run. Now making our way back to the Mountain Kingdom, it took just a little bit of finagling to be able to enter the 3rd level for this challenge. Spawning into the Cliffs of Desolation, we are immediately bombarded by a guy throwing bombs, so we quickly revoke his life privileges before taking too much damage. This level introduces the Scorpion enemies, who also come out of spawners like the regular enemies. They aren't too much of a threat though, since they're slow and don't have much health. I also use a potion on the chest that always has death inside, so that when we open it, we will get a fruit instead to restore a little bit of health. I then began clearing out all the enemies in the area, but unfortunately I make the mistake of splitting Coward from the rest of the group, and they begin to make their way up the slope to where a golem is. Luckily, I had a max level turbo attack charge, so Coward didn't take too much damage. Then I finally wisened up and finagled the group back together. Backtracking a bit, we head to the area with all the enemies that are locked behind those gates. This spot was the greatest XP farm in the game whenever I played Gauntlet Legends back in the day. We take out all the enemies inside and activate the final obelisk in this world before continuing further into the level. Later on, we encounter this strange enemy that's like a glowing yellow orb thing. I had never seen this before and had no idea what it would do, so I just avoided it, but we'll see it again later on. We encountered death in a random barrel near this golem, but luckily Loser was the only one with all the potions, so we took care of him with no problem. Getting towards the end of the level now, we got to the area with just tons and tons of enemies right before the bridge over the lava river. There were a couple of those guys throwing bombs at us as we tried to clear out the enemies, which caused us to take a bit of chip damage here, but it wasn't too bad. Oh yeah, somehow everyone's turbo attack meters got out of sync here, so sometimes they ended up using different levels of turbo attack. No idea how that happened though. Getting to the end of the level now, we took a slight detour to kill the enemies in this corner so we could take all the gold that was sitting back there. Also, Ugly had managed to grab a 5-way shot item out of one of the chests, which lets you shoot 5 shots every time you fire, and this item will be super important later on. While clearing out the scorpions guarding the exit portal, Ugly accidentally blew himself up by shooting an explosive barrel. And somehow Loser had ended up stuck in the corner where we collected all that gold from, so I had to do some rather annoying finagling to get everyone down to the exit portal. Now, you may know that this level has a secret exit that takes you to the Gauntlet Treasure Room, which is a special area where the only thing you do is collect tokens which are used to unlock the secret characters. I didn't bother going there because I wasn't going to be able to actually change anyone into any of the secret characters since it would involve navigating the menu. Now back in Sumner's Tower again, since we had activated all 3 obelisks in the Mountain Kingdom, Sumner was able to open up the next world, the castle. Ignoring another lore dump, we head back to the Mountain Kingdom instead of going for the castle. We were able to quite easily get into the next level this time around because the 4th portal was in a very good spot where everyone naturally gets in the correct formation just by running in its direction. Entering the Lost Cave, we immediately find Death inside of a barrel and use a couple potions to get rid of him. Ugly also picks up the Super Shot item, which basically acts like a max level turbo attack that you can use whenever you want, but you only get 3 uses of it. You may have noticed there are some new enemies in this level. Well, about halfway through every world, the normal enemies are swapped out for these sort of elite enemies that are supposed to be a bit stronger than the normal ones. I don't even know what these guys are supposed to be, but we kill them by the hundreds just like all the other enemies. The scorpions are still here as well. They don't end up getting replaced like the normal enemies do. Making our way through the level, Dead grabs a speed item, which shows just how problematic that item is. It's probably the only bad item for this challenge because it forces whoever has it to go really far away from everyone else. I could have tried turning it off, but everyone else's inventories also had items, so I would have just ended up activating a different item on somebody else, so I decided it was best to just wait until it ran out. One thing I noticed throughout this level was that there was a lot of gold everywhere. Some areas were just absolutely littered with it. Further into the level, we ran into Death again, and used some potions to take care of him. We also spied this level's runestone on the other side of this fissure, but we definitely can't reach it quite yet. It's around here in the challenge that I begin to realize that I can aim each character's max level turbo attack sort of independently, because each character has a different animation that will take longer or shorter depending on the character. If you change the direction everyone is facing just after the first turbo attack comes out, you can get another turbo attack fired in a different direction. I wasn't very good at it here, but it'll get more refined as we progress through the challenge. We briefly all get stuck on each other trying to fit down this corridor, and then quickly annihilate a golem. It must be noted that Coward is currently holding the maximum number of keys a character can possibly have at 9. The key distribution is not looking good. We find Death in a chest and just barely hit him with our last potion, and then try and squeeze everyone through this tiny little gap in the wall. We find the exit portal for this level, but we're not quite ready to leave yet since we still need the runestone from this level. We make our way through some more enemies and grab the runestone we saw earlier before doubling back to finally leave the level. We add the second runestone to the portal and hit up the shop again. Everyone has a good amount of gold at this point, so I decide to buy everyone a few extra points for their speed stat. I then sell off all the items we have to buy Ugly a few additional points to his speed stat. Heading back to the Mountain Kingdom yet again, we finagle our way into level 5, the Volcanic Cavern. We're still up against those stronger enemies we encountered in the Lost Cave, but we're taking them out easily enough. This level also had a ton of treasure for us to collect, like this Poison Amulet. The Poison Amulet functions pretty much identically to the Fire Amulet, where it powers up your attacks while it's active. We also find an invisibility item here, which makes the character invisible to enemies while it's active. This won't be too helpful for this challenge since it just causes the enemies to target the other players who are still visible, but at least we can still sell it for gold. Throughout this level, Coward and Ugly were taking charge of all the keys, while Dead and Loser didn't even have one, so opening chests required getting one of them to interact with it since they were the only ones with keys. Later on, I found this area with like 4 explosive barrels and end up blowing everyone up with them. Everyone still has a good amount of health, so it's not that big of a deal. The main person I'm watching right now is Ugly because I've noticed he tends to always have the lowest health compared to everyone else. I'm really hoping that doesn't end up making us fail a level later on. Remember that yellow orb we encountered in the Cliffs of Desolation? Well, it's back in this level and we weren't able to avoid it this time. I initially panicked because I didn't know what it was, but it turns out this thing just tags whatever player it touches and makes them it. So now we're playing a game of tag, but everyone does the exact same thing. Oh yeah, every single time someone becomes it, I had to listen to that awesome narrator declare that a new person was it. Look, I like the voice of the narrator, but hearing the same line over and over again is kind of annoying. Just a bit later on, we find this level's runestone on this random platform in the corner of the level, along with tons of chests to open. At least the game was kind enough to give us a couple of keys to open them. Ugly unfortunately ends up finding a speed item in one of the chests, so he's really going to be in the most danger until it wears off. On a more positive note, we find an anti-death halo right next to this frozen death, and we use it to drain health from him instead of him draining our health. I always thought it was funny seeing this enemy that you feared throughout your entire playthrough suddenly start running away scared once you pick up this item. After heading down this weird elevator thing, we find a special sword over the lava river. This is the Scimitar of Rasha, which is a really special item that will be useful way later in the challenge. It even gets its own little section in Dead's inventory, which is where all other special items will be kept if we ever find any. Getting towards the end of the level now, there were 2 golems guarding the exit portal out of the level. Luckily, Dead grabbed a super shot item just before this and we were able to make quick work of them. With that, the Volcanic Cavern was complete, and we got quite a nice haul of items from it too. We add the 3rd runestone to the circle and begin preparing for the final challenge in the Mountain Kingdom. Every world ends with a boss, and the boss of the Mountain Kingdom is the dragon. I had a very straightforward strategy to defeat the dragon, so we hit up the shop to sell all the items that we had. And geez, Coward had over 4,000 gold after selling all their stuff, meanwhile Dead couldn't even graze 400 gold. So my master plan was to use everyone's gold to buy them each a 5-way shot and then a rapid fire item, and I poured Coward's remaining gold into some extra health with hope that nobody will die throughout the fight. Unfortunately, Dead is just going to be dead weight for this entire fight because he has no money to buy anything useful. For bosses, an item like the 5-way shot can act as a sort of shotgun if you get right up in the boss's face to do a ton of damage. By combining this with the rapid fire item, we would hopefully just melt the dragon's health before we take too much damage. And now, after finagling our way into the final portal in the Mountain Kingdom, it was time to put my plan into effect. It was a bit of a close call, but we did it. The dragon was defeated and we had successfully completed all the levels in the Mountain Kingdom. Back in Sumner's tower, he placed the dragon's shard into the window, providing proof of our triumph over the Mountain Kingdom. After a brief victory dance, we go back to the shop and sell whatever was left of the rapid fires and 5-way shots. I decided to put the gold we got from selling them into one upgrade to both Coward's and Loser's armor staff. This will make them take slightly less damage going forward. Hey, welcome to the end of part 1 for this challenge. If you would like to see part 2, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the latest videos. And if you did enjoy this video, consider giving it a like so it gets recommended to even more people who may enjoy this challenge. But for now though, I will see you again in part 2.